Hello and welcome to the IdeaCast interview series, episode number 128. My guest in this episode is Chris Abdey. Chris is the host of the Procrastinator's Pitstop podcast. He's also a coach dedicated to motivation and productivity. And I appeared on his show, and now in this episode he's appearing on my show. So we did a collaboration, and I do that from time to time. And both our conversations are, I would say, congruent. But in him being my guest, we talk about his area of focus and expertise, which is time management, productivity, and the types of procrastination that we deal with as people. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. I enjoyed having Chris as a guest, and if I think about it, I'll do my best to make sure I won't procrastinate, and I'll put a link to our other conversation down below. Thanks so much, and especially to my subscribers. And I'd like to welcome Chris Abdey to the IdeaCast interview series. I'll also welcome the YouTube audience, and to the YouTube audience, I'll let you know that Chris and I had a conversation on his show, and I invited him to come over and have a conversation with me, and I'll ask him questions this time. So it'll be a nice changing of seats or chairs, and we can pick each other's minds from different perspectives. So Chris, welcome. Glad to have you here today.
Yeah, glad to be here, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely glad to have you here. And to the audience, I will reveal, if the title and the description field weren't revealing enough, I'll say that Chris is a procrastination coach. And couldn't we all use some coaching in that department? Because I think it's kind of universal in our species, being part of a, cost benefit on being really intelligent is we can sort of overthink things and get ourselves mired by procrastination. So that's where I'm really grateful to have you as a guest, because I know very little about it, and you've been focusing on it, and you've had guests on your show. So we'll pick your mind about that a little bit. So, but I think before we do anything really detail specific, let's find out about you and get some background info on what brought you here to where you are now as a procrastination coach, and you're the host of a show. You also have your website, Procrastination Station. So give us some insights, Chris, please.
Yeah, so I'll hit the highlights because I've had a really interesting life, and most of the details aren't really, they're interesting, but they're not that really pertinent. So, from a young age, I've always really wanted to help people, and that was kind of my thing. So, at between 6 and 8, I went through that stage of, wanting to be like maybe a doctor or, military, police, law enforcement, things like that. Um, Along the way somewhere, I got lost in that, just life takes over. So I got more into corporate America, started out in, client services, got into project, up the ranks there, um, and I probably should have led with that. I'm a master procrastinator. I fall into actually two of the major categories. The dreamer. So I have big plans and big ideas, and I've always been a dreamer. And I understand what it's like to get lost in the details and not really know what you need to move forward. And also the crisis maker, which is, I think, what most of us identify with, is put things off to the last minute. You get that adrenaline rush, you feel like you're more creative and you come out. And so I'd always sort of skimmed by on, by the seat of my pants. I always had that rabbit foot up, where the sun don't shine, as some people said.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so from there, I got into a lot of project management and business development, and made a lot of companies a lot of money, and helped team members and clients along the way. But I was neglecting myself, and I was neglecting, what I was working for. I was neglecting my family and social circles and all of that. So what happened is about 3.5 years ago, I decided that, I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I wasn't spending time or doing things I was supposed to be doing, what things I deemed important. So I'd had all this experience with business development, project management, time allotment, and somebody said to me, "Well, why don't you just go, be a coach and go and be a coach?" Since that's something that I've been doing pretty much for the last 25 years, just without the title. So I went and got a few certifications, did some of the studies. And that's where I decided that I would like to help people in terms of procrastination.
So how long have you been a procrastination coach then?
Oh, I've been a procrastination coach literally for the last 25 years. I just didn't
Well,
have it.
I mean, you hung your shingle out and you've been
Oh, yeah.
practicing counseling
Yeah, I've
people.
been practicing officially for about 3 years now.
Okay.
My
Okay.
online presence has only been within the last about 6 months, I think, 6 or 7 months, where I've been, putting myself out online and getting there. Otherwise, it's all been offline, grassroots.
Okay. I'm intuiting that you, as a procrastination coach, enter into a kind of reciprocal learning process with your clients because you meet diverse personalities and character types, all that. And that's got to be a really nice sort of forging process for you to only diversify your capacity to then take on the next coach or a group of people that you work with. So do you find that to be the case that you're being enriched by your interaction with people who present maybe unique, as you stated, there's maybe a couple of classifications for what we do when we procrastinate or the source of the procrastination. But anyway, do you find that this is an enriching process as you move through it?
Oh, for sure, on many different levels.
Hmm.
Just from the perspective of, again, it's something that I enjoy doing. I enjoy helping others and furthering others. But also, you're right. I think Nietzsche said it, when we stare into the abyss also stares into you. Kind of
Hmm.
a dark way of saying that, when we talk to people, we pick up on things about ourselves as well.
Hmm.
And actually, most of what we get from dealing with other people is actually not even about the other person, it's about ourselves. So when I'm helping somebody through, especially the dreamers
Hmm.
or the crisis makers, I can see a lot of myself or my past actions in what they've been doing, and actually, I can get new insights into my own past, into my own way of behavior by talking to some of these individuals. Because I'll give you an example. Really interesting. I was speaking to someone who was a surfer. And, we just got into talking about it. And I said, I don't surf, I don't swim. So like, why is that? Like, well, I had this experience when I was younger, and that I understand that that's why I don't do that. And all my behaviors leading up to now based around that. But what I didn't understand at the time was I just sort of filed it away and let it go. But when this other person was talking to me, they asked me, well, how did that affect how I deal with people and how I um, sort of because a lot of the trust was broken, right? They asked me about that.
Hmm.
And so it made me reflect on something I hadn't even thought about in 30 some odd years. And I realized that that incident actually affected other parts of my behavior that I didn't even know about. Uh,
Hmm.
in specific, it affected my rescuer syndrome because they threw me into a pool and I almost drowned.
Hmm.
So when and I do consider myself a rescuer, right? And it actually stemmed from that, but I didn't really relate it to that
Hmm.
until I talked to this individual and they sort of brought that out. So, I mean, there's always something that we can learn from other people, and there's something that we can always learn from ourselves, and that is just the nature of the beast. I mean, and that's why I love what I do too, because I learn about other people and also learn about myself.
Oh, sure, yeah, and that's so enriching to, it's kind of a mirroring process, right? And like you said, somebody can see something in you, which is wonderful. That's what makes us such successful social creatures. Is if you're paying attention, you can catch something about yourself that's coming out from the observation of another. So that's really great that's happening for you. Um, One thing, when you're coaching people who are dealing with procrastination issues, do you find sometimes thinking to yourself that, I'm up against a treatment resistant or a coaching resistant kind of procrastinator? Have you bumped into that? And what's the plan for something like that?
Well, I mean, we all have resistance, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we all have that little defier inside us that says, "Oh, we don't like being told what to do,"
Mhm. Even
or
though
we
we come to somebody to get coaching.
Yeah, so and I think that this is where some people also get confused as well.
Mm,
When I'm coaching, yes, I could just sit there and give you strategies to do or give you things to do. But I really don't do that because it would be something very cookie cutter, and you have more resistance to that. So we work together. When the plan comes from a mutual working together, then that is the best way to beat any sort of resistance that you might have for that. Because if I say, Justin, if I tell you, okay, so what do you want to get up, say at 5 a.m. every day? Okay. So we'll go through it and we'll say, okay, so how do I do that? And I'll say something like, well, no coffee before 9 p.m. Or, no coffee. Actually, realistically, it's no coffee before, if you're getting up at 5, it's no coffee before 3 p.m.,
mm,
because
mhm.
that caffeine's still, 12 hours later, it's still in your system. So to deal with that resistance, first of all, we have to go back to why they want to fix the problem in the first place,
Okay.
or why they perceive they have a problem. If you're coming to coaching because somebody else has told you to or said maybe you should, it's the same with therapy too. If you're not there of your own accord, then it's not going to work very well. So the first thing is, are you there for you?
Hmm.
You know, for first and foremost, are you there for you? And secondly, to get rid of a lot of that resistance is to just make the plan together. Because again, if the idea comes from you, ideally it comes from you, then you're going to want to stick with it and you'll break down those barriers of resistance.
And I love that on your website, which again, for the YouTube audience, that link will be down below in the description field, as well as his Spotify and YouTube channels, platforms, that you establish a blueprint for your client rather than, dictates or prescriptions. I like the idea of a blueprint because then you can look at that rendering, metaphorically speaking, that you created with your client, and it's a tool, it's a utility that they can use rather than them being expected to enact, step by step. I just think that's a less prone to fail kind of approach, and I appreciate that. So do you want to address that a little bit, and maybe blueprint vis-a-vis, again, strong prescriptive, like you got to do steps 1 through 8, and and don't falter, and yada yada. I don't know if I'm making too much of that, but it seems like blueprint's a better way to frame that.
I say blueprint because with a prescription, you're looking at being cured, and really there is nothing wrong with you. You
Hmm.
are a whole human being operating as you are designed to operate, and that is something that we get into a lot with mental health too, just in general. I mean, you're not broken.
Hmm.
You're functioning in a way that, your body or your brain is designed to function based on the environment and the situation that you're in. So I like calling it a blueprint because you're building on something
Hmm.
rather than trying to, cure or, fix or repair. Because again, you're not broken. You just, you want to adjust certain behaviors so that you can build a stronger foundation for your life.
When we speak of the dreamer procrastinator, I'll use myself as an example, as we had done on your show, and I talked about a project I was working on, but I'll pivot a little bit and say that I think I'm a dreamer when I tell myself in my middle age that I need to exercise more and I need to watch what I eat, my intake, and I conceptualize it effectively, but then there is the action that must be taken on that. Would that be considered probably one of the more broad and general things that we all deal with, is that we are good at the conceptual aspect of it, the planning, the dreaming stage, and saying, "Oh, for sure, tomorrow I'll get on that, exercise equipment or go take a walk." And I'm not bad, but I know I could do better, and my diet's not bad, but I know I could dial it up, maybe percentiles, like raising it better. So, do you find that is one of our broader procrastination matters that as generally speaking, as people deal with?
Generally speaking, yes. you normally fall into there's a few certain camps that are more common than others. When you're talking about conceptualization and then actualization, to conceptualize it's easy because there's only really one step in our mind.
Mm.
But then when we start breaking it down, when we start actually looking at what needs to be done, we either get stuck with maybe we don't know how to do it, and so that overwhelms us. So then we put it on the back burner because the effort is too much. And
Mm.
again, the brain is protecting us from strenuous activities, right?
Hmm.
Then the second sort of camp is that you know what you need to do, and then you have the steps. You start making the steps, but the steps either seem like they're too many or they seem like that they're just too large.
Mm.
So one of the steps in your diet, like nobody's going to go day one to day two, like I want a better diet. And then they say, oh, my doctor says I should go vegan. And then they say, okay, tomorrow I go vegan. I mean, that's, I mean, there's no plan there either. It's just, okay, okay. So what does that involve? Well, don't eat meat. And then, you'll start to kind of freak out because that's huge in of itself, right?
Hmm.
Well, okay, I'm not eating meat. What am I going to eat? What am I eating if I'm not eating meat? I don't know what's available. I don't know what's there. So the most important thing for any kinds of those tasks is just break it down as small as possible. I mean, it doesn't matter if at the end of the day you've got 1,000 tasks or 1,000 parts related to one main thing, as long as you focus on one at a time and you break those into manageable parts. So I'll give you an example. I literally had someone who they had an issue driving a car. They didn't want to drive a car because they'd almost had an accident. And so literally their tolerance training sort of involved literal steps as this. So literally it was um, open the door of the car, put the key in, turn the car on, put the seatbelt on, drive out the back way, go around the block, you know, and then drive back home. And that was day one. Then they did the same thing, put the key in the car, put on your seatbelt, check your mirrors, go. And all these things that we do, you'd think to say, well, why would I do that? And it's because as you check off those things mentally in your mind as you're doing them, you're building that confidence and you're creating the pathways to create a habit so that once you make that habit, then you'll just be able to go and do it all the time.
Hmm.
So I mean, that's the essential thing is if you find yourself not even able to move, one of the simplest things you do is just break it down even further and then just do that and say, okay, what's next? What's
Hmm.
next?
Hmm. I like that idea. And then conversely, as you were talking about going from being a meat eater to a vegan or a plant-based person, is that there's a titration out, which would be those incremental steps. And my wife and I did that over the last few years, and we went from eating a lot of meat to where we don't really eat a lot of meat that much anymore. I'm not by far from a vegan, but I'd say if we have 21 meal periods a week, we probably eat meat 2 of those meal periods, and the rest is all plant-based. But I'm never a rigid person, so I could never not, never say never or whatever. But I like the idea that you're saying that it's a layering process or an incremental process rather than trying to take on everything at once, which could be the overwhelm. Uh, and that works to me, I guess. Additive and subtractive is like I was saying, with the titration or the incremental development. So that's great advice that would help beat that monster that you because then you torture. I know me. I like internal dialogue. I think, well, dude, you said you've been saying for weeks now you're gonna get out and do a little more exercise, and I'm not a slug. I go out. I do physical work quite a bit, but I always tell myself, if you want to maintain yourself even better, that so that's something I can apply and take away from this conversation is do something incrementally. Uh, and then on the food end of things, titrate out of chocolate chips and whatever it is I indulge myself, whatever my medical food is.
Oh. Well, yeah, you mentioned a couple of things there that are interesting. I'll hit on both of those.
Okay.
The first one is the additive and the subtractive.
Okay.
You are absolutely right. And this is where so many of us fall into it's not just procrastination, but it applies to burnout, it applies to feeling overwhelmed in general. we tend to try to add things in order to get back to basics, which is really weird, and it's a behavior that I've seen and I've had myself, right? We tend to overcomplicate things.
Hmm.
So rather than looking at the additives, which a lot of us do, what tool can I add? So many people come to me, and it seems counterintuitive. They keep saying, okay, well, what can I do to add? They're like, what can I add? What process do I add? What trick or gimmick do I add? What routine do I add? Well, I like to look at it first. I like to look at everything first and say, okay, well, what can you take out? Because when we take out, uh, because that's essentially what overwhelm and burnout and is we have just too much. So why are we adding a process or adding a tool when we haven't taken a look at the entire process and
Hmm.
seeing what can be removed first? So definitely the reduction process is an important part. The second thing that you mentioned there, in terms of exercise, just in terms of exercise, this may help somebody. I know it helped me too because I'll go great guns. I mean, my wife and I did the same thing. We got on a real health kick. We were working out every day. Kid gets out of school. The whole routine goes out the window, right?
Right.
And now it's a big source of frustration for her. Me, not so much because I'm used to kind of lazing around, but
Yeah, right.
but it's a big thing for her.
Hmm.
And so some of the things that are to get back into it can seem daunting. So just stick in exercise snacks attached to another habit you regularly have. So I equate this to getting a cup of coffee. Sometimes in the morning, a cup of coffee takes what, depends. If you brew a pot, it can take what, 10, 15 minutes?
Hmm.
So put the pot on and just do weights or do cardio for the time that the coffee maker's going. Because I mean you're probably not doing anything else anyway.
Hmm.
And then that just becomes a habit. And so, you're not, it's not like you're taking time out of your day that
Hmm.
you should be doing something else because a lot of us kind of don't even make use of that time. So, in that time, even if it's 5 minutes, while you're making your coffee, just do like 3 or 4 squats. And it sounds like it's not going to do much, but as with anything, consistency is key. So if you can do
Hmm.
that, then you're building that resilience, and you're building that habit, right? Because then the body is going to say, oh, okay, well, I can do this now. Oh, okay, yeah, I could go out and do exercise now.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, habituation seems key, and it seems like a tool that we can implement. That when you carve a groove into your daily routines, metaphorically speaking, that like you said, you have that space wherein the coffee is brewing. That gives you that 5 to 10 minute affordance to go do something. And it reminds me when you were talking about that years and years ago, I got a job with a entertainment company that uses a mouse for an icon, and I was working at one of their resorts in the culinary staff, and they put us through this sort of comprehensive training. And one of the things was memorizing names and words. And they used hooks for association. So if the person's last name was Miller, you immediately think of a windmill, to do the hook. And it's not the same thing that you just described, but I was getting that vibe that it's basically you're entraining yourself to associate this person's face with a windmill, and then you're never going to forget Miller, and this, you have to be careful to remember Tom Miller or Susan Miller or whatever it is, but that Miller is there for you. And I see that way, like again, when you're associating your coffee procedure, your routine that you're dedicated to, because if you like coffee, you're going to do it. And there's just no other, there's no excuse, no other exception. So I like that can be an associative learning process, or even a Pavlovian kind. Like you're hooking it in and making it stick for yourself. And like you said, then would you then say that it could be something that could migrate out of that pattern, because now you're feeling good about the fact, man, I did 3 sets of 10 while the coffee was brewing, or I ran a quarter mile on my little treadmill. But then you could migrate that time slot out to, maybe an hour before or after you did your coffee, or whenever you have that time. So does that make sense that you could then permit yourself to move that time slot? Do you think there's an efficacy in that migration if it's necessary?
Oh, for sure. And a
Okay.
lot of it is just building up time too, because a lot of people they think that actually this is a relatively new. I'm not a fitness coach, but I do know other fitness coaches that go on exercise snacks.
Okay.
So their thing is to just do any exercise at all. Like even if it is like if you're too busy during the week, to go to the gym, you keep a maybe a 20-pound dumbbell next to your desk or whatever, and then every hour when you're supposed to get up and move around, just get in 5 arm curls or whatever.
Okay.
So they're all about exercise snacks because if you do that 5 times a day, you've got a set of 25.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of fitness coaches now, especially because we are so sedentary, are saying that okay, you don't want to get to the gym for 45 minutes 3 times a week, so just do the basic exercises. Takes you 5 minutes and do that once every 3 or 4 hours in a day, and it comes out. But definitely it is able to transfer over because you're building that habit. You're saying, your body's used to it, your brain's used to it. You're just moving the time. So it does
Yeah.
make it a lot easier.
Yeah. Good to know. I noticed on your as you present yourself through your website, your work rather through your website and your social media, that you're procrastination station and procrastination pit stop. So are we developing a metaphor here for mobility and that which facilitates mobility? Like if we had a vehicle, you have a station where you go in and you get that work done, the tune-ups, and then you have the pit stop where you have these informed guests and inspiring people that come on and have conversations with you. So am I picking up a theme here when you when you created that?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I'm not even sure where that idea really came from,
Okay.
but yeah, the station is more where you sort of go to, tune up and get ready to get going on your way. But often we do have a pit stop, right? Because you have to refuel. I mean, nobody goes forever, and
Hmm.
that was sort of the idea behind it, where we kind of start moving in something, we get the foundations right, we go out, but I mean, everything needs maintenance, everything needs
Yeah.
work. You're never going to get up every single day. I mean, today, Friday the 13th, I wouldn't consider myself a superstitious person, but I find myself dragging my feet,
Mm, mm.
getting out of bed and finding motivation because, historically things have not always gone so great on Friday the 13th. But I mean, that's more about mindset than anything else. But again, it just goes to show that, sometimes we just need to stop and like you put gas in your car, you need to put gas in yourself as well, to,
Hmm.
uh, just keep going.
Hmm. Thus the need for persons like yourself who do the coaching that I can come to you and say, I need a tune up, I need a recharge or fill my tank and keep me, focused on that which is being developed within me. And so that's I can appreciate that kind of framing that you can do that. Historically, aside from yourself, the species of coaching that is procrastination coaching, would you say, I don't know if how formal all of this is, but would you say that maybe in the last few years or 10 years that there's been an uptick in people seeking out that specific species of coaching? What's going on in the coachy sphere, coach system?
Right. So there's a couple of things I'd like to address there. The first one is that I do want to clarify that my job is to put myself out of a job.
Hmm.
One of the things that coaches, therapists, anybody who's doing that kind of work, they do have to be aware of is codependency, right?
Right.
So really early on, I do work with everybody I work with just to get that accountability going for themselves because it's great to have that motivation. It's great to have that inspiration. But I'm also cognizant of the fact, and I reiterate this every moment I can, that nothing in life is permanent.
Hmm.
So my biggest supporter tomorrow could be gone, or they could be, they could flip sides really easily. So I do try to hit home that personal accountability is of the utmost importance, and also the way that you can be self-sufficient and tune yourself up as well. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that
Yeah.
because that's important. Now, in terms of the landscape and procrastination itself, yeah, over the past, I'd say over the past, well, especially noticeable over the past 5 years when, we had COVID and businesses started looking at productivity and they looked at different ideas,
Hmm.
working from home, not being in an office, having disruptions in supply chains, everything. So a lot of it came down to time management and just blocking it out and doing these other things. So where the procrastination actually came in, what came in as a subset of that, because it doesn't matter how many times you slide something into a calendar. If your energy isn't if your energy isn't good enough to do the task at hand, if you're not focused, if it's a draining task and then you're putting that in the beginning of your day and it's throwing off the rest of your productivity. So that's where the coaching kind of really came into play, was a subset of that to say, okay, this plan isn't working. Why? And that's when you start looking at things like, when are you most energetic? When do you have to get things done? And then when are you emotionally, energetically, and mentally in a space where you can actually do that task efficiently?
You find in your practice that there's a diverse age range? Do you get every decade, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or are you finding that you're getting the 30 somethings right now, or where are you, what are you seeing in that?
Yeah, so there's two separate camps right now. There's the young camp and then there's the normal camp. The old camp really they really don't care. Once you're over, I found that it's rare. So the bell curve is the young, and then you got your middle, which is between 30 and no, well, 27 to 35, and
Hmm.
then sort of after that it dips off.
Okay.
Most of the young people, though, in terms of procrastination, it's because of a sense of futility right now. They're in the middle of their, doctorates or programs they're studying for, and they come to me and they say, "Well, what am I going to do after? I can't get this project done because I can't see the point in doing it because you know, in 5 years I might not have a job." And the thing I point out is that, this has been the case forever. I mean, there's no guarantee, even 20 years, 20, 30 years ago, when you went to university, you got your PhD, a bunch of cab drivers driving around with PhDs.
Right.
So that's the big one now, with the younger generation coming out, 20s to 20 to 30, is they're wondering if they're making the right choices. They're having more sort of analysis paralysis,
Mm.
where they're looking at all the potential options, all the potential outcomes, and they're not moving because they don't feel confident or secure in the movements that they're making. And that's where that one is. Now, when you're talking 30 and above, it's mostly about there's some project you want to do, you want to start your own business, you want to make a better life for yourself. Maybe you just want to upskill, because again, we're being rapidly replaced, which we shouldn't be, but we are being rapidly replaced in a lot of areas. So upping your skills is important. So that's where they come in.
Mm. Mm. That makes sense. And they're on the cusp of that midpoint in their lives. Yeah, where they like people in my age range might be considering Renaissance careers. You spent 30 years in a particular sector or whatever, and then but yeah, the idea of becoming obsolete in your prime, yeah, that's just got to be off-putting. I want to ask you about your show. Speaking of pit stops, we were there a minute ago. You've had some you've had I've gone through what your uploads on the YouTube. You're on Spotify and YouTube, and you have quite a diverse group of people. And so much like your client base, where it's been reciprocal, um, how has that enriched you? How has your facilitation of that format, how has that worked with you? I should say help, but how's that worked with you?
Well, again, I'll go back to a very cliche thing to say, but knowledge is power.
Hmm.
And how do you get knowledge? You go out and you listen to everybody, right? So it has worked in the sense that it's a very reciprocal kind of relationship. They come on, they talk about themselves. I talk with them a little bit afterward. We have a good conversation, and I gain insights into various markets or various businesses and how they actually work, and that suits me in my day to day because I talked to this person today about skincare stuff, and that's okay. I never thought of that, and the information was there, and so go back, do a little digging, made a change to my daughter's diet,
Hmm.
and boom, clear up her acne or whatever, and it was
Okay.
an aspect that we hadn't really considered, right?
Hmm.
So for me it's all about just gaining knowledge and just seeing what's out there, really.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, when you and I had a talk, we brought technology and the information age into the conversation, and I'd like to revisit that with you. But I want, you and I had kind of a flowing back and forth on that, but I want to really get your insights in as it relates to procrastination and what you do. But yeah, let's bring tech and maybe social media, but just where we are right now in the information age and what that does for and against us as aspiring non-procrastinators and achievers. What's your takeaway? So I'm opening up a huge box here, but we can go with this for a while and get some ideas out here.
Well, just in terms of social media, I mean, it's a in theory, it's a wonderful tool. It helps us stay connected, but the only thing that it's seeming to do right now is just underlining or highlighting our shortcomings as a society, pretty much.
Hmm.
Um, they've developed something that's meant for communication and meant to keep us connected, but we're less connected than ever because we'd rather be talking to somebody over text rather than face to face, just as one example. As it relates to procrastination, it's a lot of distractions. I mean, I've done this myself when I've felt kind of bored or not sure what to do. Like I don't even have my Instagram on my phone anymore because I'd sit there and I'd flip through, and they design the thing you have to understand. These companies designed the way that they work to keep you on there as long as possible.
Hmm.
Productivity be damned.
Right.
Their goal is to keep you on their platform for as long as possible for their
Hmm.
for their advertisers and for their own monetization purposes. So in doing that, they've inadvertently or advertently created this sort of negative feedback cycle now where there's just so much going on with social media that we I think we're not, I don't think we're oblivious to it, but I think that we're ignoring the very big, very real impact it's having on our society, and it's only getting more. Uh, I guess it's only getting more visible now, especially with the younger generation.
Hmm. As an aspect of this, one thing I notice, because I'm old-ish, I remember the 80s and, a little bit of the 70s and stuff like that, that it seems like in the market system, there is this drive to sell convenience to people and sell access to people, well, market access to people. And that is inclusive of everything can be delivered to your doorstep now. You really don't have to leave your couch in 2020. This is being recorded in 2024. You don't have to leave your couch anymore or your kitchen table, wherever you habitate, wherever you occupy space. And I wonder um, when that's imprinted on us by marketing, by the advertising, does that exacerbate or inflame the procrastination dilemma that there's this enabling that goes on that says, no, no, don't get up. We got you. There'll be person at your door in 20 minutes with whatever you need, or Amazon will get it there the next day. You don't have to,
Mhm.
you don't have to do a whole lot. What do you think's going on in that regard? I mean, I want to come back to social media and I want to work with that, but this I get tangential sometimes, so I apologize. But yeah, what do you think's going on with us when they are it's a market, almost like a frontier market where they're just selling convenience to people. You know what I mean? Everything can be done for you now.
It is it is having a tangible or well it's having a measurable effect for sure. Just in terms of psychology, because even if you're not really a chronic procrastinator, the mere fact that I can order DoorDash, you get used to doing that. And then, when you go to maybe make something healthy, you're gonna stop for a second. And this isn't even a conscious thought. This is just something that goes on in the subconscious because as we know, 98% of what we do is subconscious.
Hmm.
We don't even know what we're doing half the time, which is a whole other discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
But so what it is doing is you're right. The instant gratification is doing a few things. The first thing it's doing is it's telling us that, it's teaching us that we don't have to put a lot of effort into things to see a result that, we want, a desirable result.
Hmm.
And so that does lead us to other shortcuts. So today it's DoorDash. Tomorrow it is I'm exaggerating it because it does happen, but it doesn't happen that quickly.
Hmm.
But you order DoorDash today, and then next week you're not even going grocery shopping. You're just
Right.
doing everything in DoorDash because you figure out that it's good, and as long as you have the resources to do that, you'll be continuing that behavior. But then, when you kind of have to tighten the purse strings, that's when it'll become a problem because you'll be like, oh, well, I'm putting this off, I'm only one person, I don't want to spend 3 hours going out to the store. But it does become more apparent because um, it does affect you in that way. And it does kind of teach you that, effort is not rewarded. So the least amount of effort is rewarded. So that gives us, the wiring in the brain that tells us that, oh, okay, this is easy. This is how I do it. This is how I'm supposed to do it. And, then you tend to procrastinate on writing a report or doing something else because it's not the click of a button anymore. It's more involved.
Hmm. Hmm. This might go back to the idea that you were speaking to earlier about incremental putting the keys in ignition. And I almost think if that discipline could be imported over into this forbidden fruit, if you will, of just enabling easy facilitation of living, that when we are aware of this in our lives, that we use that same kind of mode of lensing how we engage with it, in that it's okay once in a while to if you've got a heavy night, especially if you have children, you need to call on that convenience and you need to have that thing brought to you. I think that's perfectly within bounds. But like you said, I think when it becomes this overwhelm of man, I want more. I just want to keep going. So I almost think like if you could have that impulse control in order by way of just to saying, this is something that is to be done discreetly and when necessary, not so in other words, it's the exception rather than the norm. Would that make sense from how you address like how maybe so maybe this is not what a procrastination coach should be dealing with, but if it's coming up and saying, well, I find that I tend to order everything and I never really have
Mhm.
to do the stages steps and things to get whatever I need X, food or whatever it
Mhm.
is. Do you
Right.
think that kind of mindset would lend itself to keep you from getting trapped in that cycle of convenience or whatever you want to call it?
It certainly would a little bit.
Mm.
It might be hard to sort of draw the correlation there for
Oh,
some people.
okay.
But I'll give you a very real example of something in my own life, and it's not It is procrastination, but it's not constant procrastination because it's only situational.
Okay.
So in our house, we have a light on a timer. It's on a regular switch too, but it's on a timer. So, when the light doesn't come on or something happens, maybe the power flickers or whatever, the timer doesn't work, I find that I do not want to just walk over to the switch and hit it. I would rather have the timer on my phone or the app or something to do it for me. But when the app is down, because this happened once, the app was down, it got uncontrolled. I had to actually, reconnect the Bluetooth and do all that because it was a smart switch. And so I found myself actually procrastinating on walking over to the switch and doing it. I would have rather, set it up and go on to the app. And I had an issue with the app because it wouldn't work for like I don't know what was up with it. It needed to update or something, and it was like 4 days. Now, ask me how many times did I turn the light on and off manually in those 4 days?
Yeah. Okay. How many times? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Zero.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that kind of speaks to a training of sorts, like the habituation again, and how it can work both for and against us, or we work for and against our habituation, or yeah, something's going on there where there's trade-off in whether it's our friend or not, or if it's working to our favor or to our advantage. I ask these questions and I'm thinking, oh gosh, yeah, because like I think you hit something very powerful a minute ago, and it's that you can correlate it, you can lens it and say, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? Am I being just sort of lulled into this intellectual torpor or this behavioral torpor or stupor or whatever you want to call it, that I just am surrendering to, the world of convenience, but there's, they're nickel and diming me out of my retirement account or whatever, whatever my future liquidity and worth might be. Yeah, I mean, almost like there should be a not quite a coaching industry, but a salience industry that could thrive on this, making people aware of how we get ourselves. And I'm not above it. I'm not saying this like I have it figured out. I'm deep in it too. But it just would seems to me, if there's a young entrepreneur out there, take note that this, or you could take note on this and say, wow, just having that kind of education platform or tools available, I think would be valuable, especially for younger folks. I don't want to sound like I'm picking on them, but they're far more immersed in that environment. I think we touched on that in our previous conversation, that it would do well. You would do well as a younger person to step back and forth and try to lens and not get so drawn into that surreal world of seeming convenience and seeming ease and all of that. So to go back to social media for a second, one thing that I find in social media, and I think this is something we tapped into in our first conversation, is uh, I guess they're called influencers, and you have people online and that are selling an idealized life, whether it's hustle culture or whether it's efficiency and organizational perfectionism and all these different things. To me, that might jive with certain mindsets, certain psychological dispositions and things like that. But I think for a lot of people, it might be kind of torturous to see on Instagram or TikTok these perfect people doing perfect things. And they're an influencer and everything's, look at me, I'm perfect, yada, yada. And I'm not pointing to their narcissism. I'm just pointing to this thing where we get trapped, and I've seen this in people I know where it's just like, Jesus, I mean, I can't do that. And that could set a spiral and I think it ties into procrastination because again, this hustle mindset that like, oh, you're 33 and you haven't done this, all these things, or you day to day, you don't do all these things, and which is kind of the implicit messaging. So what do you think that's doing to our minds? When we see that, and I say I don't really dip in that well as much, but I mean, I think there are people out there that look at these folks with perfect lives, perfect agendas, and leisure time and work time and all this kind of stuff. I think that could kind of weigh on people who aren't sorting out the wheat from the chaff as far as like what their lives really are like and what product are they selling you, on their Instagram or whatever.
Oh, no, for sure. That the whole keeping up with the Joneses or what you're not doing. And it is very detrimental. But it goes back to when that is happening, then, I tend to try to work with them on, the need for validation and sort of self-worth. Just because, it doesn't matter what other people do. And, I'm not immune to this. I mean, I'm not sure if it's happened to you, but, having your current spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend or whatever, who's, you go to a show or whatever, and it's like, oh, wow, that guy's so muscular. And you kind of looking at like, you're like, oh, well, it's like, okay, yeah, he's got more muscles, but I get, you get in this immediate defensive mode. It's almost
Yeah.
like we get so defensive in that, and it is detrimental to do that. But again, just going back to that saying, the grass is always greener on the other side, and yeah, it's also usually over the septic tank. So
Mhm.
underneath the good stuff, there's a pile of crap that they've had to go through.
Yeah. Yeah. Or that they themselves are sort of medicating by way of projecting this image of them being put together and being uh, great at whatever it is they profess to be great at. But in reality, maybe the Oz behind the curtain, like you said, not only is there the historical crap, but there's the crap that hasn't been addressed that they would, again, they're in a mode of idealization to say, this is the life I want. I'm gonna post it on Instagram, but then again, I'm looking at the audience saying, oh, there's people out there in the audience that are maybe struggling with depression or self-esteem issues, and they're saying, how can I ever be that? And it's like you said, when you go out and you see some person that's sculpted or whatever, and you're like, yeah, there's more of a reifying assessment or that which you can reify to say, oh gosh, and that goes back to the exercise thing. It's like, well, if I see a person who's got a nice physique and I think, well, I got my middle-aged kind of body here and could I tone to that degree? Could I get to that place? And I would try not to let it depress me, but at the same time, it could just add fuel to the fire, like, oh God, I'm such a schmo,
Mm, mhm.
you know.
Well, it boils down to the whys, right?
Hmm.
So why, when you see something like that, the first thing to ask yourself, and when you find yourself falling into that is why do you care?
Hmm.
Well, what about that physique? What about that person? Like what does that trigger inside you that gives you that sort of feeling of either inadequacy or lack, right? So, and if you ask yourself that, then you'll begin to learn, sort of the motivators or the demotivators behind that, and then you can actually start to move forward in that, right? The issue is that most of us don't dig that deep. We just say,
Hmm.
we take it, and because we have this tendency to avoid pain,
Hmm.
we don't dig deeper. So, this, say my wife says this Italian guy looks hot. Oh, you better not go to Italy. Like, okay, all right. So yeah, there's a little twinge, there's that pain there, and it's like all of a sudden you just shut it down. You're like, you're not even asking yourself, okay, well, why do I feel that way? Like, why do I immediately feel threatened by that?
Hmm.
So if you dig under that, you can say, okay, wait a second. Okay, so they made that comment. Yeah, the guy's got muscles or whatever, and okay, so why do I feel threatened? And it goes back to basically fear. And the more that you can sort of live without fear, the more that you can kind of condition yourself to not do that. When you work on that, when you actually, and it's funny because it's almost like subconsciously when you work on one fear in your life, that all the other ones start to sort of fade away. That noise starts to diminish.
Hmm.
So oftentimes, if you're working on a phobia of some sort, so if you're working on, say, arachnophobia, some people were working on that. They found that the people that were able to conquer their fear of arachnophobia they actually did studies that correlated that to feeling to them also going on social media or feeling uh, like almost like jealousy or like envy of other things. They found that those feelings also subsided a little bit,
Mm,
and it all came down to and there's still ongoing studies on this,
hmm
but the initial hypothesis that they're going with is that if you remove the fear of not getting what's due to you,
hmm
then you no longer have these adverse effects imposed by society.
mm. I really like that because part of the, if anybody ever asked me for advice, that's something I would try to bring to light is the idea of personal investment in things that are within your control, but also that has to be participatory. Like it's not always entirely in your control, and as we pointed out in the last few minutes, we measure and weigh ourselves against things that are not realistically applicable to us. So I'll never be that 6'2", chiseled, handsome, tall, dark, handsome kind of person. And why? But therein, as you just pointed out, I need to be less invested in the why of why would I want to look like that, and what's my ego telling me there, or so I love that. I love that because I think that is good medicine. In terms of letting go of some of our attachments to, again, things like idealizing and perfectionism and things like that. So I love that. I think that's a great point. We're sneaking up on an hour here, and I have two more things that I want to check in with you. And one is kind of broad, so let's start with that. And that is that in our conversation, if there's something that you want to bring to the fore, if there's something you want to bring up that hasn't been covered in this conversation, let's go ahead and bring that out. And if there isn't anything, yeah, just throw something in there and we'll kick it around a little bit. But yeah, if there's something that you do and that you want the audience to be aware of, let's bring that out.
Honestly, the only thing I want to bring to the forefront here too is just self-compassion when it
Mm,
comes to just self-forgiveness and self-compassion more than anything else
hmm
is really important for everybody, no matter what the scenario is, but especially when it comes to procrastination, because we have to understand that we operate on the basis that we're doing the best that we can at the time with the information that we have on hand, right? So you might say like, "Oh, I'm a chronic procrastinator." Well, you did the best that you could, or you're doing the best that you can with the information that you have at the time. Now, you don't have all the information. So just go easy on yourself, and
mm.
it's not something that and it's hard. Okay, it is hard, but to just have compassion for yourself and understand that you are doing the best that you can given the information that you have. I mean, because nobody sets out to do the worst thing they can do for themselves. I mean, nobody does that, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, just having a little bit of compassion and self-forgiveness and hindsight, like, oh, I should have done that. Well, you did the best you could with the information you had at the time, right?
Yeah.
And I always give this example of doctors. Are you able to forgive doctors in general? Because they've made some pretty big mistakes over the past 3 decades. Like back in the 1950s, they had these huge advertising campaigns for Camel cigarettes.
hmm
They were healthy, all
Right.
doctors Camels, and there were no adverse health effects. And fast forward 20 years, oops, we gave you cancer. Like
Yeah.
um, you know, uh, so if you can forgive doctors and you can still trust doctors, even though that happened,
hmm
why can't you do that for yourself?
hmm hmm Yeah, because that cigarette matter was born probably more of ignorance than any kind of malfeasance where they were like, "Yeah, kid, go ahead, I need a cancer patient anyway." Yeah, I get that. I get that. It's that given what they had at their in that time frame, um, that we can lens it easily looking back, but in the context of that time period, yeah. I mean, God knows everybody smoked in the 50s. Ugh. I'm glad we moved on from that. Well, I guess people still smoke. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they live in Brooklyn in New York City, and she said it was $13 a pack up there. I'm thinking, holy crap, what is that like? Oh God, I don't even want to know how much that is a month if you're a pack a day person. It's like about $400 a month for cigarettes. I'm like, oh man. When I was a teenager, it was like $1 a pack. I'm on a tangent here. I apologize, but just the fact that you would work that hard to hurt yourself seems odd. Let that be a caveat to the young folks out there. Put those cigarettes down. Save some money. Pull it over
Oh
into a
yeah.
mutual fund. Yeah.
Well, I have worked a lot with addictions,
Hmm.
there's lots of information about this, but the key to any addiction, just a sort of sidebar there, is just understanding why you do it. I mean, is it escapism? Is it, something else? Is it what are you covering up? Because most addictions are just self-medication
Yeah.
because they really don't know what they're doing. They don't know what else to do. That goes for any addiction, right? So I do work with a lot of people with addictions, and yeah, the first step is just to understand why more than anything. Like it's not even about the cost, like you said. Like there's all these negative effects. Like why the hell would anybody use crocodile? Just looking it up online, your skin flakes off. You lose
Yeah.
your teeth. Like
Yeah.
how is this desirable for anybody?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or go with something simpler, alcohol. I was
Right.
there, alcoholic. Woke up with horrible hangovers, had to go to work. Had to drink
Yeah.
it to stay there. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
um, the thing is just why you're doing it, and
Right.
then have compassion, and just that's the first step there. Sorry, that was a little bit of an aside, but
No, no, no. You're welcome to do a side. You've seen me. I go on tangents. Robin Williams had a funny line. I think it was live at the Met, and he's like, "They shouldn't call it free basing. They should call it home basing because it costs you your freaking house, $50,000 a year, yeah, for snacks." I think he was trying to like, how do you write that off? The snacks. He had such a good sense of humor. But yeah, I agree. And we can analyze it from a cost analysis. But yeah, when you're in the throes, and I was the same way when I used to drink. Oh my God, I can't remember what my beer budget was every month, but again, it was up there, and I thought, oh my gosh. And now I don't. Coffee is about as fast as I fly anymore, so that's cheap. But yeah, anyway, so you've been doing this throughout the conversation, but maybe we'll bring the aperture a little tighter. If there are potential clients out there for you who are procrastinators, speak to them for a moment if you don't mind and say, I'll have all the information down below to get to your website. I'll have your socials. But yeah, talk to them for a minute and tell them how they can get with you and what your discovery calls. Let's do a little of that for a minute, and then I'll have my last question for you.
okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, just anybody listening, if you're having an issue with procrastination, feel free to go to my website. There is a short quiz if you're interested in what kind of archetype you are. I mean, there's five main archetypes. Just understand that there's nothing to be ashamed of as well. I mean, everybody goes through it. I mean, I'm guilty of procrastinating actually
Hmm.
today.
Oh, okay.
I put off. I put off. I'm putting off a phone call that I need to make. So I mean,
Okay.
it's. I mean, I understand, and
Hmm.
it's something that it's something that can be beaten, and something that you might need to work on hard, or you might not need to work as hard. But yeah, feel free to go to my website, take the quiz. I think it's like 8 questions.
Okay.
It should give you a little bit more clarity on what sort of what you're up against. I mean, it's not perfect, but it'll give you a generalized direction to go in. I'm always happy to chat. There's a button up there. You can schedule time with me. I will say that it does require work. This isn't something where you're going to contact me and I'll give you this little pamphlet and you go home and you read all the directions, you take a pill and you're done.
Yeah.
It does.
You're not DoorDash.
No, not DoorDash. It does take work.
Okay.
And but I am very thorough in my process. So one of the things when you work with me is that you have to understand that we look at everything. So that goes from your mindset, focus, your energy, and then we work on if we need to work on timings or things like that. So there is a lot of investigation in there. There is some homework. So
Hmm.
just not to try and throw you off, but just realize that anybody who's going to tell you that you can beat procrastination in like 30 minutes,
Hmm.
uh, if it's an ongoing thing, probably not.
Yeah.
If it's just that, I'm putting off making a phone call today because, I just don't feel like doing it. I mean, that's something. But if it's something where you're constantly, putting things off, then yeah, you need to do the work and go through that. And I'll be happy to do that with you.
Okay. There you have it, YouTube audience. You know, you have nothing to lose and much to gain. Well, you could you could lens it as though you might have something to lose, but I would say that the effort will be rewarding. And as you mentioned earlier, Chris, sometimes the kernels of wisdom are garnered in oblique ways, in different ways, and not saying this to your potential clients, but let's take it a nice life perspective on this. That what if you in good faith engage in your desire and make it actionable to change and to just adjust yourself and reframe things. Man, it's worth the time. It's worth the effort because procrastination can be a uh, what do they say, hamstringing kind of thing. It can kind of get in the way of your having a productive life or a life that you may be visioning for yourself. So yeah, that's good. The last question I would like to check in with you on is good way to, I think it's a high note to end on is for your practice, for what you do, I used to again work for a company that had a mouse for a mascot and they called it Imagineering. Do you sit and try to think forward, like what would you like to maybe add to your repertoire of things you do? Would you I don't know. I don't know what that would be, but is there like some people sometimes I ask people if they want to write a book about this or so what are you imagining much for yourself for the future or what would you love to see come from what you're doing?
Oh, what I would love to see from what I'm doing is just making a lasting impact and change. And I do have more plans to. I've taken a little bit of a different approach to the coaching. There's a lot of other coaches that are taking it and making it like the almost like the mega churches sort
Mm,
of idea
mm,
that's where they want to take it.
mm,
Um, I'm a little more practical. I think I'd rather just get on the talking, get more on the talking circuit, get more go more to local universities and make an impact at that level.
mhm.
The future thinkers, the future because that's where I think that the biggest impact is going to be. I mean, at the end of the day, I'd love to help a CEO make another $200,000 a year, but honestly, I'd rather think that I helped the guy that cured cancer to stop procrastinating and get his PhD and actually start his research.
Right, right.
So that's
Yeah.
where I see myself is just kind of making more lasting change like that.
I like that. I think that's great. And to the mega church concept, I think when you have, let's say, a capture of 1,500 people, you've got a diverse population there. And so what might work for one-on-one or a room of 20 people may not land as well for 1,500 people because of the diversity. So I like that you don't want to scale up necessarily because then and I've been to some of those conferences where there's 1,000 people, and some people have wonderful transformative experience. And other people are like, oh, well, there goes $2,000, and it's like, whoopsie. So yeah, I like that you keep it simple, and even complexity systems people, science, that think that way, they're like, no, you can't scale certain things up. So that's good. Well, I will be a sort of distant cheerleader for your success. Distant in the sense that we've had this collaboration when we've talked, and we're connected in that sense. And so I wish the best for you, and I will hope that you can achieve that which you are doing. And I say hope in a strong sense that I hope the best for anyone that is trying to do good for our fellow people out there, and cliche, make the world a better place, but yeah, that we are all in our own little way endeavoring to assist those who are next to us and beside us, and that we can hope that that radiates out into the community, and that we all benefit from it. So, Chris, I want to acknowledge that and just acknowledge what you're doing, and thank you. Also, thank you for your time, for being with me, and for allowing me on your show. And you and I were able to have that conversation. I actually went to your channel and watched that this morning. Watched the two of us talking, so that was nice to revisit that. So I appreciate that. In fact, for the audience, I'll put that link down there too. Maybe they can watch another hour if they want. So, Chris, I will say goodbye to you after we stop record. To the YouTube audience, thank you all so much for your time and attention. Again, everything you need to discover more about Chris will be down below. So appreciate it. Take care until the next one.